Welcome one, welcome all. Welcome to the first proper video of spooky month. It's time for boils and ghouls for some pant wetting spots.
You really need to fix that voice box. Sure, why not, but do we have enough piranha? Oh, sorry, I misheard. Anyway, hello my lovelies and welcome to the first spooky video of Spooky Month, brought to you by our partners at Riley's Laboratory. It's not science if somebody isn't screaming. I have total confidence in this partnership. Halloween approaches my favourite time of the year because it's the one day that it's socially acceptable to dress up in a silly monster costumes and beg for sweets. Like seriously, how is Christmas so many people's favourite time of the year? If I turn up to my sister's Christmas dinner dressed as a vampire, well, okay, she wouldn't be surprised because she knows me. But if I turned up to anyone else's house dressed up as a vampire, they'd probably be more worried about the fact that some random gender trash broke into their house and is now squatting over their table eating their chicken.
What point are you trying to make here?
Right, yes. On Halloween I can wear silly monster outfits and get free sweets. I can't do that on Christmas, that's when you get sectioned.
Still, it wasn't us at the hospital to let you out.
Sure. That's what happened. So today we're looking at a game from 2019, another on my list of things that I was actually looking forward to, only to be kind of let down by, but as I was previously excited for it, take it away, you lunatic.
Oh my god, it's Close to the Sun! A spiritual successor to the BioShock franchise! Oh, what a day! Now just pretend I did that in 2019 and we're good!
If you don't know, BioShock is one of my favourite franchises, though it did lose me a little bit with Infinite, but Infinite wasn't a bad game, it just wasn't a good BioShock game. I first heard about Close to the Sun back when I was dumb enough to be subscribed to Watch Mojo and it appeared on one of their top 10 lists. I think it was the top 10 most anticipated horror games list, I think it was that. Naturally, all they had to do was say spiritual successor to BioShock to pique my arousal, because BioShock was one of those things that I went through a phase of utter obsession with, to the point where I was trying to convince a friend of mine that a Big Daddy could totally win in a fight against a Terminator Space Marine. Yeah, I was that kind of deluded fan. Luckily I grew out of that. Mostly. Anyway, Close to the Sun came out and I played it for 10 minutes, then forgot about it. Then when it came to consoles, I played it again and remembered not being overly impressed, but I also remember basically nothing else. Is this a case of me overlooking a true masterpiece, or is it something that deserves to be forgotten? Well, let's dive into this and take a look, shall we? But first, if you enjoy these videos, then don't forget to like, leave a comment and subscribe for future videos. If you want to, you can support the channel further by going to patreon.com/Ronica Reviews and pledging £1 a month, which will help me to keep building the channel and bringing you content, and it will also get you some nifty benefits. You'll get 24 hours early access to new reviews, a shout out at the end of videos, and you'll get to suggest new games for me to cover. But what if you want something more tangible back for your support? Then you want to head over to ronicareviews.teamor.com to get yourself some merch. We have several t-shirts for you to browse, a couple of tote bags, and even a jigsaw puzzle. Also, you can follow me on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter if you'd like. You'll find links to everything here in the description below. Now, on with the video. Close to the Sun was developed by a studio called Storm in a Teacup, a fact that I really want you to know because I love that studio name. There are some really great studio names out there, seriously. It's a first-person survival horror stroke puzzle stroke adventure game set aboard the Helios, a giant ship made by Nikola Tesla, and the easiest way I can describe this behemoth is Rapture but floating. Oh wait, you might not know what I mean by that. Can someone else explain it so I don't have to?
Rapture is that underwater city in BioShock. Basically, the whole thing was free market and regulations so lacking, even the modern US would tell them to tone it the fuck down. Yeah, Helios is basically that, but less market and more unregulated scientific stuff. I mean, there is more to it, but that's the Cliff Notes version.
Yeah, so that. We play as Rose Archer, not to be confused with Sterling Archer was the first joke that came to mind, a journalist and sister of Ada Archer, one of the ship's head researchers, and we come to the Helios at the written request of our nerd sister, arriving to find that someone accidentally spilled a bucket of horror game all over the welcome lobby. Let's see now. Blood, yep, got some of that. An absence of staff or other people to interact with, sorted, gotta have all that. A menacing word scrawled on the wall, excellent, yep, all the cliches are in place. I mean, I can't really shit on a horror game for doing horror things. I can, however, call out the lack of originality that made me sigh the first time I saw it all. I guess I just prefer stories with, you know, a good pace to them. I don't know. I'm just saying this doesn't need to be so immediate. We can have a build-up to this sort of thing, you know? That's absolutely fine. In fact, that makes the horror pop all the more when we've got something more not horror to contrast it to. That was an ad-libbed bit, that's why it sounded like crap. It's not long after we arrive that we're contacted by our sister who tells us where to go, and then we hear Nikola Tesla over the PA system telling us to observe the quarantine as the ship is currently dealing with some quantum fuckery. The fuckery specifically is the fact that the people aboard the ship were trying to harness the very power of time itself for unlimited energy and accidentally spawned a bunch of monsters that get really cross when this happens.
Well, that sounds like some contrived bollocks.
Yeah, you might be right there. Let us confer with the council.
I'm no science-terist, but that sounds like bullshit.
Yeah, that's a load of horseshit.
When I first saw the monsters, I chuckled because they looked silly. I mean, look at them. This is what they look like. As a good rule of thumb horror games, your monsters shouldn't make me giggle. Look at that big goofy mouth. How am I supposed to take these things seriously? Couple that with the fact that outrunning them isn't all that hard, and they only appear when the blue time gas stuff appears, so you'll never be caught off guard by them. In fact, that's just how this game does enemy-stroke-monster encounters. There are no real survival elements to this survival horror. Oh dear, that's not good, is it? We can't crouch to sneak around or gather any resources to help us survive, and the enemies only appear at pre-designated times, and this just leads to a brief chase. There's no sneaking around them. You'll die if you take a wrong turn while running away, but the game is so liberal with its checkpoints that outrunning these cosmic horrors from beyond the veil of time and space has all the tension and suspense of waiting to see if my local KFC got my order right this time. Horror devs, another lesson. I shouldn't be so keenly aware of the complete lack of stakes in your video game, because that kind of sucks all the tension and scares out of it. Rose can run for ages, can easily vault and crawl to get past obstacles, has a fast door opening animation when she's fleeing, and each baddie will only ever really catch you if you pause for a second or if you go the wrong way. It's more like a time trial puzzle than an actual horror segment. It's a shame because until we see the bad guys, the game's atmosphere is on point. I was quite tense wandering around these empty corridors and everything like that, but this all drained once I learned that the monster scenes were entirely contextual and that running away was the most effective thing ever. Yes, you might be an unshapely cosmic horror from beyond the veil of human understanding, but yeah, I could just leg it, mate. What are you gonna do, huh? And you do have to run because Rose won't pick up any of the multitude of tools like fire axes or knives or wrenches or any of the other instruments that could easily be used to cave in a skull, which really confuses me in horror games. I get that we need a sense of helplessness to add to the scares, but I also don't buy that so many horror game protagonists don't think as they're exploring, hey, that giant fuck of fire axe might be good if Samuel the Slasher Sinclair comes around again. I get not trying it against the monsters, but for the moments when we're dealing with a human antagonist who's stalking us, I don't get why we can't just, you know, pick up the nearest object and smack him in the genitals. But then running has got to be easier to program than combat, so I guess I don't blame the smaller studio here, at least not as much. But it is a trope that I consider to be overused. Anyhow, we get help from a dude over the radio named Albury who, oh, wait a minute.
No spoilies! No spoilies!
There we go. Who I should have suspected would betray us. I usually have a good sense of these things, and hell, he serves the same role in this game as Atlas did in the game that Close to the Sun is a spiritual successor to, you know, Bioshock. His name even starts with the same letter. Still, I didn't see the betrayal coming, so credit where credit is due, I suppose. Until that point, though, he guides us through the ship. Of course, he is trying to get us killed whenever he can, though we're carrying 2 notebooks that he really seems to want, and a few of the ways that we might have died would have basically left them inaccessible to him. Didn't think that one through, did you dozy cunt? Or perhaps he just takes those from us to make a point. I don't know. I'm gonna be honest with you, whilst the betrayal scene is kind of interesting, I was sort of zoning out by this point. The game wasn't doing a lot to keep me invested. All we could really do is wander around and solve some very basic puzzles and then do a chase. Editing Ronica here. This scene that's currently playing of us fiddling with a safe, it's a problem to me narrative-wise because we're supposed to be finding some research for our sister Ada, but rather than just tell us where to find it, because we're in a dire situation, apparently, she makes us solve a puzzle, and why? Why does she do this? Maybe because the devs were feeling really clever about this puzzle? I mean, it's matching shapes, it's nothing special, so why? I don't get it. There's a bigger problem in this, that sometimes the people don't act like they're in a dire survival situation. Anyway, let's get on with the rest of this. Had the game had more, what do you call those things?
Survival elements.
Oh bloody hell. Well, at least you got that thing fixed. Yeah, if only this survival horror game actually employed some survival horror elements. A good example in my mind of competent survival horror, at least one that starts out as such, is Zombie. Yes, it is a game set in a zombie apocalypse, which I think are now more numerous than stars in the night sky, but it manages to make the player feel vulnerable by making the zombie encounters tense, as you know that one bite will end your character. But it does so whilst employing combat mechanics and sneaking, letting the player really feel like they're in an intense survival situation. Close to the Sun is horror adjacent at most, with what few elements it manages to pull off successfully being overshadowed by the ways it lets itself down. One thing that threw me, and I mentioned this earlier, is just how enthusiastic the game is about placing down checkpoints. What I didn't mention is how the checkpoints feel like they're cheating a little bit, though it is in the player's favour. During the second scene, where we're chased by this dude, Ludwig, not to be confused with the one from Bloodborne, I was chased and quickly caught because Rose just stood there watching him approach for ages before legging it. But then, when I respawned, I was ages ahead of him and easily got away. One scene where we're trying to avoid energy pulses that come from this giant Tesla coil, I found that the game gave me checkpoints several feet ahead of where I'd been killed the last time. It's this sort of cheap shit that feels like a cop-out for when the game just didn't give us enough time to actually escape the things wanting us dead but still wanted us to progress. The first time I actually got killed by the monsters was when Rose was already heavily injured following a cutscene and limping. I paused whilst running away, being a big idiot. I missed an obvious door that I was supposed to exit, and that's what got me killed. On the next attempt, I did it easily. The game doesn't really have much in the way of real challenge, as we can easily detect when enemies are about to happen. It's not a surprise when they do. There is blue monster energy in this room and 2 switches that I need to pull to move on. Well, a monster totally won't appear when I pull one, forcing me to run to the other. Only an absolute hack would think that would be surprising to a player. Of course, not everyone is so observant, or clever, or talented, or sexy as I am, but I do seriously doubt that anyone wouldn't figure this out. But what of the ending to the game? Fucked if I know, I got stuck on chapter 8. There's a chasey bit, which is the first instance I've seen of the game's checkpoints not just letting you skip steps, though I kinda wish they did this time. Oh, how lovely this cake I'm eating is, if only I could have it as well. This is the bit that I sarcastically brought up 2 paragraphs ago. Once you pull the first switch, it spawns a monster and you need to pull the second one to get out of the room. The issue is, I have no fucking idea how you're meant to achieve this, because the monster chases you quite quickly. I've tried everything I can think of. Legging it? Nope. Trying to jump the railing on the stairs? Didn't work because Rose took her jumping lessons from Professor Stephen Hawking and even when running could barely clear a cow pat. I've tried luring the monster to follow me around the room so I have more time to pull the switch. I've tried just waiting for the switch bit to time out to see if the monster despawns. At one point my phone went off, and because I was so thrilled and engaged with this video game, I put the controller down to check my messages, forgetting for the moment that I was meant to be fleeing for my life, but then the monster just sort of stood there waiting for me. I had to walk into the fucker to get him to register my presence. I tried like 12 times to get through that door, and I'll be honest, I can't say I care enough about the ending to keep trying. This bit is just annoying, and given the rest of the game up until this point, I can hardly expect the next couple of chapters to be the saving grace of the game, the bit we play to see, so I guess Close to the Sun wins this round. Look, I won't say the game is terrible, it at least functioned for the most part, though that is the bare minimum, so you don't really get points for it. I've played worse games than this, and I doubt I'll ever consider it again. Hopefully next week's topic of Clear, which also proclaims to be a survival horror, does a better job. The store page did say that Clear doesn't bother with jump scares and just tries to do horror properly, which is nice. My anxiety really appreciates a lack of jump scares. So Close to the Sun, like so many promising projects that I initially held expectations for, just left me kinda frustrated when it wasn't boring me. The characters are, well, they're there. The graphics are competent, the sound is alright, the voice acting is also alright, nothing really to report here. I did have to adjust the brightness right at the end there because the game was so pitch black I could barely see anything. I get that this too is a horror trope, but I don't find darkness particularly scary. It was just kind of annoying to deal with. The darkness was adding to the atmosphere at the very beginning of the game, again, before the monsters happened and before the horror fell right out of this thing. After that point, it was just another element that added to the game's tedium. Close to the Sun really needed to do more with its gameplay. More survival horror elements in the survival horror game would have been nice, maybe some puzzles that were a bit more complicated than match up the shape or turn the valve. Its story was a bit on the meh side. I find that the monsters being as easy to get a look at as they are doesn't really help anything, but then I found the monsters' overall inclusion to be kind of a tension killer. I've been more tense playing Firewatch. Hell, I still get tense playing that game even though I know the mystery. I get more tense wandering around the Sierra Madre Villa in Fallout New Vegas. Hell, I get more tense just checking the date on my milk than playing Close to the Sun, and it ain't fucking hard to get me like this. I literally freeze in terror 9 times out of 10 someone phones me. So that's that. What a great start to the Halloween month. Here's hoping again that next week's game isn't kinda shit. Oh wait, I was gonna point out just how lame that title is before we go. Close to the Sun, yeah, we get it, like the Icarus myth. Very clever, storm in a teacup. Now piss off, Mama's got shit to do. Oh, sorry, I misheard. Anyway, hello my lovelies, and welcome to Dispersed, apparently.
Still, it was nice of the hospital to let you...
Halloween approaches my favourite time of year because it's the one day that it's socially accessible. That's all, folks.
Yeah, Helios is basically that, but less market and more unregulated. Not unrelated. It's not...
It's a first-person survival horror puzzle adventure blah 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 blah. That... what happened there? It's a first-person survival... I'm still laughing at my last fuck-up, fuck's sake. Blood, yep, we got some of that. It's a horror game and it's doing horror things. No, I misread. That's the next paragraph, you fuckwit.